Ragewin, and I'm here to review Annihilation, starring Padme and Poe from Star Wars as soldier lovers who apparently are cheating on Anakin still, who each embark on a vague, perilous, but very vague mission to another world. This is the second unimpressive film of Alex Garland, who directed Ex Machina, another bland and tedious sci-fi fanfic with a lot of good ideas but no sense of how to present them. Annihilation is not a film without its fair share of ideas. The premise may be partially recycled from Avatar, Alien, and The Descent, but you know what? So is every other movie of this genre, and a lot of sci-fi flicks do it with varying degrees of success. So I was definitely intrigued by the premise of this film. Padme is this forlorn housewife who mourns the loss of her husband Poe, a soldier sent on some vague secret mission. Then one day, he comes home out of nowhere, and something is not right. So through a series of horseshit plot contrivances, she is thrust into the same exact mission that Poe's crew failed at miserably, under the guise that she's a biologist. Then you can tell about an hour into the film that the movie writes itself into a corner. Padme has to explain to us that she was also in the military for 7 years, and that's why she can shoot so well. Oh, okay, glad you cleared that up just in time. Better too late than never, I suppose. You would think that Padme's personal investment in the mission would disqualify her, but it doesn't matter, because we aren't given any backstory on how the mission came to be. What is the Shimmer? Nobody knows. What are they looking for? I guess that's left up to interpretation. None of these questions are ever addressed. It's just a bunch of vague bullshit. This movie sets us up for a big thrill ride, or at least an emotional roller coaster, which can work just as well. Emotional character studies are not inherently bad. It's trying to be like Arrival with Amy Adams, which is also a tepid, empty waste of time. But this one could have been different. It could have made me relate to the characters, and this movie just blows it. Padme is given nothing to do. Her only expression is constipated. This movie's in way over its head. Most of the writing is just lazy. The characters are one-dimensional. The plot is contrived, and by the third act I was left thinking, okay, it looks good, but who gives a shit? Now, for a top-secret government mission, this has to be one of the most inept I've seen in any film recently. We start off with these 5 lesbians, okay? After the male squads have already failed to destroy the lighthouse inside the Shimmer, it's like fucking Sauron's ring or whatever. For some reason, they decide to send 5 female recruits in, I guess as an experiment, because our military doesn't give a shit anyway. If they had just used that as an excuse in the movie, that would have been better than nothing. But they use nothing. So, doesn't matter. These 5 women, they go into this purple orb in a forest, which is known as the Shimmer. Then they wake up 4 days later with no memory of what happened in the previous 4 days. Of course, like everything else, it hardly matters, because you'll find yourself struggling to remember just why the fuck you walked into this piece of shit or why you thought it would be any good. After all, it's gonna be on Netflix in March, so you might as well just wait for that shit. Good game. So, none of the crew's electronics end up working, and even their compass is broken. Wow. Damn, you'd think they would have been better prepared for such a perilous mission, especially given how unqualified they are, but the movie never pulls back and explains any of this shit. It never gives us an idea of what this world is, how its rules are defined, which you would have to know about, right? In order to send people on this mission? Maybe not. I don't care how you go about this genre. You can make it as vague as you want, but you gotta at least answer a certain amount of questions before you go along with your vague-ass bullshit story. Let's talk about the characters. Each of them is a trite walking cliche. Padme's the conflicted protagonist. There's the over-aggressive dyke character who is always played by a Latina. They've really cornered the market on that role for some reason. There's the nerd girl who has to stop the whole movie to explain the plot for 30 seconds. There's the disposable character who only exists to say ominous shit and then gets killed off later. None of these characters except for Padme are given a shred of backstory. There's this toilet paper thin subplot about Padme cheating on Poe with a black dude. And once again, the only emotion she's given to work with is solemn and depressed. That's all anybody is in this movie. It's the most boring shit. At least Ex Machina had an explosive Oscar Isaac performance with a Steve Jobs complex to carry the movie in its slow bits. But none of the characters in Annihilation ever reach that level of fascination. They're of no interest. There's nothing special about the way the story's presented, from a cinematic or a narrative perspective. There were a couple things I did like about this film. There are a few scenes that are legitimately nerve-wracking. The genetic mutations that populate this world are fascinating to watch. They're creepy, and they were the only things I can honestly remember from the film. And the film has such a great premise that the longer these people stay in this world, the more it affects their DNA in mysterious ways. And this movie could have done so much with that to ratchet up the tension, and instead it just jumps the shark completely. This could have been Jurassic Park on shrooms if it had a good story, but instead it's trying to be 2001, a who gives a fuck. But if you don't at least have a solid narrative, you might as well be showing us two giraffes getting it on. That would be more entertaining than this. The narrative is purposefully jumbled as some sort of sci-fi detective story, so from the beginning we already know what happens to the main character. And from the second we see Padme post-mission, we have absolutely no questions that we should be asking throughout the film as it flashes back. The sole purpose of revealing the end of your story at the beginning of the film as a narrative device is to leave your audience asking questions. My only question was, when will this piece of shit end so I can go home and jerk off? This movie's not just up its own ass, it's jerking itself off up its own ass. That in its own way is some sort of achievement. But there's so much bullshit in this movie that if you ask any questions about it, the defenders will say something along the lines of, "Duh, that was left up to interpretation." Hey, if you like the movie, no hate. At least have a better excuse than that, though. Maybe logic doesn't matter to you as much in movies. No problem there, Jack. I mean, I like the Star Wars prequels after all. But those were aiming to be something entirely different from Annihilation. As I said, the monsters, on the rare occasion we catch a glimpse of them, are awesome. But as soon as they exit left stage and go back to their trailers, this movie goes back to being another slow, meandering slog through the woods, like an all-female episode of The Walking Dead. It tries to offset how lame it is by giving us some trippy CGI, but I could design a better third act on Microsoft Paint. There's some magnet bitch that has the same costume as the Black Panther. She and Padme get into a scuffle. Really unfortunate shit. This movie had the potential to be a grand Lord of the Rings adventure where the characters slowly press towards the destination and every step they take leads them into greater peril. But we don't get any of that suspense. There is no build-up. Even in the scenes that should be truly horrifying, the characters themselves barely react. When shit happens, it's like, huh? Some shit happened in this part of the forest? Okay, let's move on to the next part of the forest, I guess. Woohoo! I don't understand this new style of sci-fi where every scene has to have zero emotion and people only act really glum and depressed. This movie's like watching all of the bad scenes in Blade Runner 2049 with a couple of good monster scenes thrown in. Stop remaking fucking Arrival. Just stop. There is no journey. It's boring. It's numb. It's dull. Mediocre film overall. I give it a 4 out of 10. See Game Night instead. That was a funny movie. For Rage Win, this is Jake Jones. I'll be back with another video shortly. Follow all the links on my social media. Peace.